this meeting to order. We'll
That's good for you.
try to get everybody out of here at a reasonable time tonight. I'm sure we all have a full plate.
Yeah, I think fairly widely known.
All right, the first order of business will be the approval of the minutes of May 15th. We have a motion to approve the minutes as they were mailed.
So moved.
Motion by Ritter, support by Rogers. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. This brings us to the first opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to make 3 minutes of public comment this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. Todd, did we end up getting CCS? Did we have a representative from CCS or from Dr. Conlon's organization? here
Neither are
this
going to be
evening?
able to make it. They're letting their proposal stand, or their bid stand.
Okay, well, their bids didn't explain a whole lot of what they were offering, and the price tag was pretty big.
Yeah, I explained that. I figured at minimum CCS was going to be here. They were trying to arrange somebody to be here today, and I've been trying to contact them all day and haven't been able to get a hold of anyone.
Okay, we had some additional discussion since we didn't get anything from CCS and Conlon. Takes care of that. Additional information regarding expanded service from Northern Lakes Community Mental Health. Are we going to hear any presentation about that or discussion about that yet?
Some
or
discussion.
at least some
And
discussion.
I'm going to ask CMH if they wouldn't mind coming up to the podium as we talk about it so they can fill in as well. But I met with Community Mental Health. The one component that was...
Carl left you in the dark?
The component that was missing from Community Mental Health's presentation as compared to both the other presentations was a psychiatric component, and a psychiatric component that kind of put everything under one umbrella. They are prepared to give a bid for something like that. I'm working with Dr. Cummings and getting him some information. They're actually going to have a couple of psychiatrists come tour the jail this Saturday to get a better understanding of the inside of the operation. I'm told the psychiatric component cost-wise, because they don't have the solid numbers yet, will be similar to what we pay now under the CCS contract, which is $75,000 for 20 hours per month. Is that an accurate representation of our conversation?
Yes, what I recall in the conversation was that Dr. Cummings was in deliberation, if you will, with two Department of Justice psychiatric providers. And that we would be in the, quote, ballpark.
Yep.
Well, and I think that's, at this point, what we've got to do, at least from my perspective, the proposals that we've received from both CCS and from Dr. Conlon last month were not well defined, and the price tags were pretty high, you know. The idea that we talked with Community Mental Health about expanding into a psychiatric services within the jail, and it was in a similar cost, if you will, to what we are currently paying. I believe in the preliminary discussions, there was discussion that they would really think that we should need more than 20 hours a month, maybe like 40 hours a month, but the 20 hours a month is at the same $75,000 that we are currently paying. I guess what I'd like to do is get that all locked down a little bit better. I do appreciate the fact that, you know, they at least had some discussion with us, but obviously, in order for us to take a recommendation to the County Board of Commissioners, we have to have firm solid numbers for that. I think there's probably no purpose to continue discussing or investigating CCS or the opportunity with Dr. Conlon directly. Dr. Conlon, as you may recall, is the psychiatrist that is currently under contract by CCS working in our jail. She was previously a Grand Traverse County employee working in our jail, and then when she took her hiatus and left, when she came back, she went to work under CCS's umbrella. So I guess, maybe we're not gonna have a whole lot we're gonna do tonight. I guess what I'd like to talk about a little bit is there are some things that were outlined in the CMH plan last month that we really need to key in on. First, that first aid managing mental health crisis for all staff in the Grand Traverse County Jail. I'd like to see a solid recommendation and commitment by Grand Traverse County to have as many of our corrections staff as possible to participate in that. Now, I don't know, and maybe you can tell me, how does that work as far as class scheduling? Obviously, we're a 24/7 operation, so I can't say, all right, on Tuesday morning, we're gonna have all of our corrections officer staff. We can't do that. So how does that normally work, and what's the class size, and how often is it available?
Typical class size is 40, but we would be willing to work with that. I'm one of the trainers for that, so I feel like I can speak for this pretty freely. Cindy Peterson is my counterpart. We're willing to come to whatever shift you need us to come to. We'll come to you. We just believe that it needs to occur.
Okay. Well, I think, at least from my perspective, I'd like to see a solid recommendation and commitment by this body and by the Board of Commissioners that we will see that our corrections officers, at least as many of them as we can schedule and make happen, get that training as soon as it is available to us. I think that's the first piece about it.
Yep.
And that's the, and their cost of services, that's the managing mental health crisis training cost, is that, or is the whole of that page?
Well,
There's a train the trainer mental health training, that's much more expensive, that's a
yeah,
little
the
different.
course we're discussing now is the mental health 911, is that?
Mental health first aid.
Yeah, mental health first aid.
And we would come to you for that. The second one, those first two were either ors. There is some value as you move forward. I can control the mental health first aid because we provide that directly. I can do that within the next couple weeks. I think Cindy and I can probably work our schedule around whenever it is that you want us there. We've been trying to get in to do the training for a while. The second one there, I believe, is the one that's supported by MCOLS. And I would think that you would want to do that one ongoing because it's supported by the police.
Because if I recall, the first aid mental health came without much of a cost to it, right?
Right?
Correct.
And then the train the trainer thing, that comes at a little higher cost.
Yep.
But we would certainly be looking at, getting someone, but ideally, I'd like to see someone on each shift, in that program, if we can figure out some way to make that happen. I think we can put the squeeze on the captain in the jail to make sure that we figure out some way to make those schedules work.
Yep. we can do that.
And, make sure that at least the sergeants and as many corrections officers as we can get through the first aid part.
Yep.
I think the sergeants are important to get them in there first,
Yep.
as many as we can. Tom?
Yep.
The first two segments are, first, not very expensive and obviously have a lot of value. The third one, what is the train the trainer program? That's more expensive, and what is that training? Who gets trained, and what are they trained to do? This is the first one, we've been talking about that, and then this was mentioned, this is the third one, is that one? And it's called
So
Train the Trainer for Mental Health Training.
Yeah, so that was based on the curriculum they have in Houston for their jail staff specifically. And they have a trainer named Frank Webb, and he's doing a training. So the cost that you see there is the one that we said we had grant dollars for, that we would be willing to pay for up to those numbers in the parentheses. So that would be going to them. We've also engaged in conversation with Mr. Webb, or Officer Webb, I should say, to come here and do a training so that we could maybe get more jails in our catchment area in that training as well. So that's yet to be determined, but he has said for sure that we could come visit their training and get the full training so that we could come back and provide it.
Well, I think we would be certainly willing to have discussion about sponsoring that event if we could. We obviously have the facilities to do it.
Okay.
And I would think we could certainly work on dealing with that part of it. So I think the two different sections of training, we can absolutely make a commitment and recommendation to move forward with those. So that brings us down to, are we prepared to talk about, a recommendation for the licensed mental health professional or the certified peer specialist? Or are we, what do we want to talk about that? That's the other two components of this proposal.
So if we could, I'd like to talk about that just for a minute. So if you look at the other two proposals, CCS is roughly $238,000 to bring in a nurse practitioner for 40 hours a week. They also had an offer for, instead of or in lieu of the nurse practitioner, for around $115,000 for a case management specialist that didn't necessarily have to be a psychologist. So their comparisons to CMH's are kind of apples to oranges. To look at Dr. Conlon's, she did reduce her cost in her most recent from $420 to $360, but the proposed treatment did not, or treatment providers didn't change. Their treatment providers would still be a mix of 40 hours a week between a nurse practitioner, a therapist, and the doctor. They would give you a mix of those bodies to include 40 hours. So if you set those two aside, if you look at what mental health, community mental health is, or community mental health is proposing, you're looking at $163,500 to have 2 full-time bodies in the jail. And then they're also talking about adding the component of psychiatry that could take over the rider to the CCS contract now at a similar cost. Bodies in the jail available to provide a level of service. We're much further ahead with community mental health. I know there's some questions about the certified peer support specialist. I have had the opportunity to do a lot of research on that in the last few weeks. That has the model is pretty interesting, and it's a proven track record for showing success, having somebody that has been in that system and has dealt with both sides of the system to be able to provide some level of insight to people, and maybe not at a professional level of therapy, but they're there to guide people and give them some assistance and help with case management. And case management is a big aspect of what we're missing. Tracking those people that are coming in that are not urgent or emergent need for services when they get there, but then to start to deteriorate while they're there. And to have somebody that's able to kind of keep track of those cases and make sure they're getting the referrals to the appropriate psychologist or psychiatrist as it comes necessary is really one of the biggest components we need. So I would recommend that we accept this proposal and look at what their psychiatric proposal is, see if that is substantially equivalent to what CCS is, and make that recommendation at that time. But if we went ahead and approved to make this recommendation as they've presented it, even without the psychiatric component, there's going to be a period of process where they have to hire these individuals, vet them, and make sure they find the person that's the right fit for the jail. We've had a lot of discussion when I was in meeting with them that, we can be picky, and they know that, and they know that we want to have some say. I mean, it's their employee, but we want to have some teeth in the game when it comes to who's going to be coming in to do this. So I think this is the way to go. It puts everything under one umbrella. You have less opportunity for one service provider to say, well, this was the responsibility of that service provider, and vice versa. It's all going to be under one umbrella of service, and the continuum of care should be much more consistent.
Anyone else have any comments?
I have a question. Licensed mental health professional, 1 FTE, are you contemplating a psychologist or a social worker, or what do you contemplate for that position?
It could be a licensed social worker, a licensed professional counselor, or a limited licensed psychologist. It could be any one of those.
Okay.
But that person may or may not be able to prescribe medications.
No.
Will not be
They
able
will
to
not be.
prescribe.
Okay.
But we'll have
That's
the
the psychiatric
psychiatrist,
component.
they'll presumably be liaising with the psychiatrist so that the psychiatrist with some update could then prescribe appropriate medication.
Yes, they would be expected to share their assessment findings and their observations with the psychiatrist so that they could find the best, most appropriate medications.
Now, the certified peer specialist, well, we'll see. The idea of someone who is going to work with people who are in the jail who have mental issues and get a plan for their exit from the jail with family, with other support that they have, and with the mental health treatment that they need, so there's not a big gap. They get out of jail and make an appointment 4 weeks from now. That's 4 weeks of opportunity to have things really get out of control.
Right.
I think it's a great idea, and it's the case manager idea, and it helps with a problem that's more than just mental health in the jail. A problem that we've had for a long time is people who are out of the jail and then on probation, and mental health services for some significant share of them is necessary, and there's no handoff now. This would provide a handoff, and let's face it, the mental health provider for most of these people will be community mental health.
Yeah.
So I think it's all good, and having it seamless with the same organization makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the idea is that it would reduce the recidivism, that we would get them connected with services so that
And
they're
on
not
a timely
returning.
basis, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be ongoing while they're there and then connecting and following through.
And housing and the things they need to do to be able to survive and be successful.
I can't promise housing. We will make referrals, we'll make connections, we'll do the best that we can, but I think we all know there's housing shortages in Traverse City, but we do the best that we can. We'll work with Goodwill, we'll work with Tip of the Mitt, we work with the
But
local.
not everybody's got to live downtown.
That's
You
true.
know,
And we will look at all.
Working taxpayers live south of town. I don't know why everybody else has to live in town, but. that's
We
a
wouldn't
whole
focus on in
that's a
town.
whole
I just
other
want to make
subject.
sure when you say housing, we're not guaranteeing to find someone
No,
housing.
you're not going to pay for the housing, but you can help try.
We will
and
help them,
enable it
yes.
And facilitate it.
And make connections and try and walk with them through that process.
Phil or Mike have comments?
Well, my concern is more with the numbers. The concept is fine. You know, I'm not a human resources expert. I do have a daughter who's a nurse who's interested in pursuing a nurse practitioner, and she tells me that if she's successful, salaries for nurse practitioners who can prescribe medication are around $98,000 and up. And I've already expressed my concern with regard to $65,000 for the formerly mentally ill felon who, the concept is fine. That's why AA works. That's why NA works, is having people who understand your problem guide you through the process of recovery. I guess my qualm about $65,000 for this position would dissipate rapidly if the county board were prepared to reevaluate all of its employees on an educational, experiential basis with regard to that salary, because there are a lot of people that work in this county that aren't making $65,500 with benefits.
Well, not to argue with you, Your Honor, the one thing that I will get a kind of chuckle out of every year when I get from the county is the sheet that says what I cost the county, and that doesn't reflect anywhere near what I make. And I think that those are the numbers you're seeing here. There's costs associated with community mental health with hiring somebody that aren't those benefits and wages, and that's part of that. We have that same cost in our other contracts with CCS, with other vendors, that when they hire a body, you're paying the liability insurance, you're paying everything that's associated with that employee outside of the wage and benefit. So, you know, I don't know what part of that number of 65 is the actual wage and benefit, but I would have to guess it's significantly south of $50,000. And the rest of that is operating cost.
Well, I haven't looked at your malpractice premiums, and I've had occasion to do so. But the reality of malpractice in a jail with a gross negligence standard would suggest it ought to be at a relatively modest level compared to say, the standard that applies to a doctor or a lawyer working outside
Right.
of the jail setting. And again, I think implicitly, we've already made a decision apparently not to hire an employee. I mean, you could hire a nurse practitioner who can prescribe medication and use a psychologist on an as-needed basis, or psychiatrist rather, on an as-needed basis. But I guess we're not going to do that.
That was kind of my thought too, with respect to, with the added cost and added personnel, we still don't have anybody who's able to prescribe medications more than so we're having no increase at all in the ability to get people medicated if need be with this proposal, right?
With the one that you have, that's accurate. Does not include psychiatry, although, as Todd noted, that he and Dr. Cummins have had some discussions with psychiatrists that currently work with the Department of Corrections that are willing to put forth numbers similar to what you have now.
Do you think might it be a good idea to get those numbers before you decide on this, to figure out what the total package is going to cost?
Well, you can do it one of two ways. You can combine that all in one package, or you can accept this proposal and then they put in a proposal for psychiatric to take over. Because right now, we have a contract for 20 hours of psychiatric care. I would prefer that all be under one umbrella instead of a medical contractor and then community mental health, and we have an opportunity for people to fall through the cracks, or this fell under that.
Finger pointing it.
You know, we'd like to really try to avoid that.
We've been there before.
If we're gonna go one way with our mental health treatment, I would like all of it to be under that umbrella, so we just don't have that. Now, the current psychiatrist that we have, we don't run into where we can't get people prescribed medications. The problem we have now is that component of those people that are borderline cases that may not necessarily need medication, but need some type of therapy or some type of counseling or some type of coping skill. That's a mechanism we're completely missing right now. And also to have somebody track those cases, and if they're starting to progress, refer them to the psychologist. Right now, the psychiatrist is overwhelmed with those borderline cases because there's no one to provide anything else.
And that's the piece that we gain with this $98,000 mental health professional. That's you know, I think that's the piece that I think we can all identify that we are missing. You know, and you know, certainly we have something about the reintegration back into the community. You know, that's the peer support specialist. You know, I think it, in my mind at this point, I'm certainly ready to commit to the first aid costs and the mental health first aid and the train the trainer program and the licensed health professional, because I think those are absolutely, we can document that we need that additional service. The peer specialists, I think we probably have to have a lot more discussion, you know, at least in my mind, and I'm sure we're gonna wanna hear, the county board's gonna wanna hear a presentation about exactly what that person is going to do and what that service is going to be. I think that we can explain very easily these other three items in this thing. The county board, I believe, will support those three pieces. The peer support thing, we're gonna have to have a discussion about what we're getting for that $65,000. One of the other pieces that happens with the psychiatrist thing and needs to be in the discussion with CMH if they're going to take over, and Todd and I have had the discussion. One of the big problems we have is a psychiatrist will prescribe a certain medication. Well, the list of meds that are provided by CCS does not include that medication. So then that person who's been on the medication and was coping, you know, reasonably well with that medication, all of a sudden they get to jail and that medication is not available to them. That becomes a problem for us.
And I had a conversation with community mental health, and particularly if we're under contract with their psychiatrists, they would like to be at the table to have conversation in our next RFP for medical services, to have input on what that formulary will be. So the mental health professional will, which they should have say in that formulary before we enter a new one.
And that's up in February?
February 19th.
February 2019.
Yep.
You know, and I'm pretty sure that if we decided tonight we want to implement some of these steps, we're probably looking at least the fourth quarter, probably before we get to them anyway.
Yes. Yep.
Tom?
Two questions. If we do the psychiatrist portion, which is being discussed and is needed, and the psychiatrist prescribes medication for a patient who needs psychotropic or mental health medication, who, and there must be an answer to this, I just don't know the answer, who provides or pays for that medication? Can we get Medicaid to pay for it? Does the county have to pay for it?
It's paid for out of our medical services contract if it's in the formulary.
All right, so if we have a psychiatrist through CMH or somewhere else who prescribes a medication for, prisoner Jones, we have a way of getting that medication.
Correct.
Yes.
And
Okay.
even if it's outside of the formulary, and they've gone through the process, we can get things added to the formulary through CCS. And there are ways to go outside of the formulary. It's just, it takes a little more
Okay.
legwork.
Second question, again, it's a question for information, the Train the Trainer program. Now, that tells me that somebody is being trained from the jail who will come in and train other people in the jail. Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm. The jail staff and Stacy and I. So obviously Todd is still on there, and then whoever replaces Nate Alger
So this would be
is
a
who we're
couple
recommending.
people from the jail who would go to this program and then come back and do the training.
Correct. Correct.
Are you gonna be one of them?
Probably.
I would suspect,
That'd be
I would
great.
suspect the idea would be that the captain in the jail, the lieutenant in the jail,
And the
would
administrative
probably be
sergeant.
the administrative sergeant,
Yeah.
and the undersheriff would probably be the candidates for that program.
Because I spent 3 years on the mental health board, and having Captain Ritter speaking mental health speak would be really worthwhile. I think this is worth hearing.
Well, unfortunately, I've known Captain Ritter probably longer than you have, so I probably have a different opinion, so we'll leave it at that. Tom?
So the medical part, the people that can prescribe, the psychiatrist, which firm is that right this minute?
Right now, it's under CCS.
It's under
Okay.
CCS.
Yep.
And that contract is in place until February of 2019.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say that I believe if we were to negotiate a contract with Community Mental Health to provide psychiatric services in our jail, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't take CCS long to sign off on that portion of that
That's actually
contract.
an add-on contract to it's an amendment to the contract, and it's a 30-day.
They would be happy to get rid of that component, I'm pretty sure of that.
Okay, because if that stayed on, I was just thinking maybe we want to time everything so that it expires in February, so that we're not staggering it. All the services basically expire at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and there's going to be a budget component of this. The county board's going to have to, budget money to cover these costs. The mental health first aid costs, that one's free, so that one's nice. And the costs for the train the trainers, as I understand it, is pretty much free also because it's covered by the grant. Is that
For the
correct?
two positions. And then I think, like I said, Mr. Webb has agreed to come here, so we could take a couple there to see what it's like with the full session, and then he could come here and train the others. So it wouldn't be as much of a
I
cost.
guess I'd
and-
like to flesh out that proposal a little bit more somewhere along the way too, but I certainly would like to make a commitment on behalf of, or I'd like to hear a commitment on behalf of this group that we are in fact going to move forward with the first aid piece, the train the trainer piece, and then I guess I would like to at least entertain a motion, if you will, to ask the county board to approve the licensed mental health professional 40 hours a week in the jail.
Okay, what was the price tag for that last thing you said?
$98,000.
Good. And the other ones are
The other two are basically free.
negligible, really? Okay.
Well,
So
Mr.
you-
Chairman, I would recommend, at least with regard to the training, that both aspects of that be recommended to the full county board. I think one of the additional benefits of having internal staff trained to do this is it makes it very easy to roll it out to road patrol, investigators,
Would it make any sense to?
first responders.
Make any sense to split the mental health first aid and the train the trainer into one thing with the
I
county board, and then
I don't think
make
so.
the other thing a second?
Well,
thing?
we can,
Yeah.
we can that's strictly going to be a commitment on behalf of the, have the county board authorize it, because obviously officers are going to be being paid when they're attending these issues. But I believe we move forward with, the recommendation for the mental health first aid and the train the trainer programs. And do you want to handle that as a separate motion and then talk about the mental health professional?
That's what I'm
Sure, I just thought
suggesting,
it was
yeah.
logical to
Okay.
break it into training and.
All right, then I will entertain a motion to make recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to have as much jail staff as possible attend the mental health first aid program, and that we identify key individuals, probably at least the captain, the lieutenant, and the administrative sergeant in the jail to attend the train the trainer program.
Support.
Okay.
I'll second
All right.
it. Or
so
that's the support side,
it-
that's the
Well,
second.
I'm gonna let Judge Rogers make the motion, and
Okay.
Mr. Commissioner Mayor will support. Is there any discussion?
Maybe we might want to make sure that everybody understands that train the trainer is going to include individuals from other jails too.
Well, that will be up to the individual who, if they bring a program here and train it here, we will open it up to the surrounding communities to
Right.
bring their people here to be trained at the same time. That would just make sense.
Just makes sense. Yeah.
But as far as from a Grand Traverse County perspective, we are going to come at as many officers as possible do the first aid thing, and that at least the top 3 administrative officers in the jail do the train the trainer. Any other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now let's talk about, do we want to make a recommendation for this mental health professional? Or the peer support specialist?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, post-release referral is probably the largest growing area of litigation in corrections, because they have a lot of deaths related to not having a good handoff for somebody. Las Vegas has 2 or 3 suits going on right now over it. That case management portion in that, I think, because it's not only those that are getting out, they're helping track those that are inside that aren't. Maybe those borderline cases that they see on their daily contact that are starting to deteriorate. It's one more set of eyes to make that referral to the psychiatrist. I think if we're moving in the direction of doing this, we should look at their whole proposal, and look at both those positions, make a recommendation to bring both on board. Because then also, you, more than likely, if one of them goes on vacation, the other one's gonna be there. We don't lose somebody for 2 weeks and have an incident because we had somebody on vacation. But I think it's important that we look at both those components and what they do. One is there to solely provide referrals and treatment to those borderline cases. The other is to help with the case management aspect of that, and then get people the appropriate follow-up care that they need on the way out. If we don't do that now, I think we're going to be revisiting that very shortly, because that's the way things are being driven by litigation. So,
My concern, Todd, is what you're describing as a case manager involves a level of skill, education, and experience that seem qualitatively different than the way this certified peer support specialist was described.
I won't disagree with you there.
They're apples and oranges, and I would agree, what we need are oranges, and the ones we have in the system now, whether they're front of the court case managers, circuit court or district court probation and parole officers, are people with a great deal of educational experience, and then they get hands-on training, they're part of the system, this is what they do. The certified peer support specialist, the reason I can't support that tonight is I have no reason to believe, given the description we've heard earlier, that this person's a case manager. This is a person who was formerly mentally ill, who may have a felony or a misdemeanor background, who's willing to sit down with others in the jail and share those experiences, which is great. It's why NA and NA work. But that's not a case manager. And I don't know what certified means. You know, we had a person here with a certificate in accountancy a couple of years ago who couldn't add. Well, Sunny may feel differently about that, but I didn't think she could add.
Well, I look at it through a little bit different eyes. Having seen, I don't know how many thousands of people in the last 20 years come to jail. There are people that have a very high level of education and work experience that have a breakdown in their life, that have had mental health treatment in the jail, had substance abuse issues, moved on through those, and go on and do other things. That is who, in my mind, I'm seeing in that position, and where I would be trying to steer the table with community mental health to fill that position. That's much different than what can often come to mind when we're thinking somebody that has been through CMH and been through the court systems. That's not the first image that pops in your mind, but I think that, well, I know from personal experience in dealing with them, I know there are a lot of those individuals in this community. Whether or not one of them will accept a position like this or be interested, I don't know that, but I wouldn't accept a level less than that and allow them to come in under that contract. It has to be the right fit for us to work. To bring somebody in that's not going to do what we want them to do wouldn't work for us. So, but the concept of the program, I think, is appropriate. It's just finding the right person to put it in there and manage it the right way.
So can I maybe add some clarification to that? So to be more specific about what you're asking for, in our world, a case manager will do linking, coordinating, monitoring, advocating, and assessing. And a peer support specialist will do linking, coordinating, monitoring, and advocating. They don't assess. That would be your licensed mental health professional. So in terms of what are you getting for that service, you're getting someone who is going to link them. They are going to coordinate services for them. They are going to advocate for them once they're in jail to have that doctor's appointment moved up, to maybe have an agency sit down with them sooner rather than later so that they're not out 4 weeks without any services. They are going to be able to teach coping skills to that individual, either in an individual basis or possibly in a group setting. So you are going to get services from this individual that you're looking for, that Todd is looking for in terms of people being in the jail and also leaving the jail.
Do we see resumes, even anonymous resumes of? I don't need to know their names, but I would like to see something more than not necessarily any education beyond high school, formerly mentally ill, and a criminal record. I mean, that was all that was described.
So
Now,
believe
Jerry Olson went to the 8th grade and created a food empire. Les Biederman, 8th grade, created a cable empire. There are brilliant people out there who didn't necessarily go past high school.
Mm-hmm.
But, this is a pretty delicate situation, and it seems like it's all sort of on faith that somehow this person with this background is out there and can do all these things that we send other people to college for, to get social worker degrees
Mm-hmm.
and criminal justice degrees so they can work in probation and parole or the friend of the court.
Right. So I do not have a problem redacting, but I would obviously need to take that through my HR department to make sure I'm not missing any labor laws or HR laws or anything like that. But I think that having some redacting would be appropriate. I'll ask. And if we can do that, then I will have Carl and I send it to you via email for you to look at. But I will say this about the people that we provide services to. Most of them we do hire, and they go through the certification process. Most of them earn a degree while they're working on that with us through this process and move on to other things. So these are people who are struggling, and with the help in the society, like, I made a bad decision, I made a bad mistake, but that doesn't mean my life should be over. I can do something with my life, and they do. And sometimes they're promoted within our agency, and sometimes they leave our agency. But it is not uncommon for our peer support specialists to go off and get bachelor's and master's degrees and then move on beyond us. I'm telling you, I know you're saying faith. I can bring you back numbers. I'm happy to bring you back data of our pre and post. That's stuff that we can do because it's not trackable or identifiable information. I'm happy to share with you information about our turnover rate with peers and where they go when they leave us. Whatever they shared with us in their exit interviews. But I think that it's a program worth having. And I shared with Todd the last time I was here, I understand where you're at because I was there. The first time it was brought to me as a mental health professional, we're going to do this, my first thought was, you're going to do what? How is this going to work? Because I had same thoughts that you had. But what I've learned over the last 11 years 12 years now that we've been doing this, is that when you find the right person, it's a great fit and you have exceptional outcomes. The data shows that. That's not my opinion.
Tom?
Would there ever be a circumstance where the licensed health professional or the certified specialist wouldn't see an inmate? Is there any situations like that? I mean, you'd see all the inmates, in other words.
If you're paying for the service, we would work closely with Todd, and Todd would help guide their work. I can't imagine unless it was a family member or a conflict of interest, in which case we would send over a different person to see them.
And I'm more comfortable, I like that we're making some headway here on the training part, but I'm a little more comfortable in separating them to some extent. And then when it comes to the printout, these are just copies of the overhead presentation. I'd be more comfortable if under licensed mental health professional it listed those 3 job titles, because those are different licenses. Those are different things. And then if there are different ones under the support specialist, I'd like to see those enumerated, as job titles, because they would be different licensed positions as well, just for clarity. And then it makes it easier maybe to compare with CCS or somebody else. But
Okay.
and then the last thing is that how do these things that we're discussing, how have they appeared at other jails that you've offered services at? Are we doing something that you've already done at another jail, or is this is more than most of the service that you offer at the other jails?
This would be more. If you accept the proposal and you purchase these positions, it would be more. But I will tell you, I've been at several community meetings, county, specifically Roscommon County, and also in Wexford County, where they're paying attention. And my response to them is the same as it has been with you all, that Carl has set in place, which is if you want more services, you have to earmark those dollars that you guys are paying for this service.
So you think that's going to happen at other jails too? They're going to take a look at some of what you're suggesting to us, and they might adopt that too? Or?
Possibly.
No.
It's sparking conversations in the 6 counties. Out of the 6 counties that we serve, in addition to you, there's 2 others that have approached me about this.
That's sort of where I was going with that,
Yeah.
just as for comparison. So.
So basically half of your service area is having the same discussion that we are.
Well, they all are, they may just not approach
They
community
just-
mental health yet. In our District 1 jail administrators meeting, this was all we discussed, and they're very interested to see where we end up and how we end up looking, because they're looking for us to kind of model the way.
Nope, no questions, thanks.
Great, Tom's done. Tom done.
Certified peer support specialist. I really wish it said case manager, because then I'd think it was a case manager. I mean, is this a case manager?
You cannot be a case manager because they cannot provide the assessment that you would need to be a case manager. They can provide linking, coordinating, monitoring. They can teach coping skills. They can do a lot of what the case manager does, but they can't do the assessing piece. That would have to come.
Psychological assessment, they can't do.
Psychological assessment, your risk assessments, they wouldn't be able to do those.
Okay,
That would
that's
have to come from the licensed mental health professional.
All right. And certified, who certifies you?
The state of Michigan.
There's an actual position, certified peer support specialist?
Yes, it's a program that's supported and licensed by Michigan Department Health and Human Services.
Is this a licensing regulation license, or is this
It's
like
no.
social worker or psychologist?
It's not Lara. No, it's MDHHS, Department of Human Services, Human Health and Human Services.
So is it more like a certification, or is it really a license? Or?
It's a certification.
Okay.
Yeah, it does not go through Lara.
That's the difference. Okay.
Mhm.
I guess that's one of the reasons that I'd like those job titles, because if it matches up with a license, I'd just like to know job title, that one's licensed, or that one's certified, because that's different.
Right.
Well, I don't know if it's, the money and whether it's worth the money, you always have to ask those questions, but it is a big hole in our process that, substance abuse people are the biggest share of our probationers. but mental health is probably the second biggest share, and there's a lot of our probationers, our mental health problems, have mental health issues. And having someone who can manage their transition and help them arrange the logistics of transition from the jail to probationary life afterwards is a huge hole we have in the process. And I'm prepared to take a leap of faith on that, and hope you guys can, that what we're talking about is that kind of process.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, and I don't think you need a master's degree to help someone facilitate that follow-up either, so, it's certified peer support specialist, is kind of a title, but it's somebody to hold their hand while they get from point A to point B and reintegrate into the community. I think that's the.
What I think you want, Sonny, is a cow that'll give you milk, and calling a horse a cow, you're never gonna get milk. You can call it a cow all you want.
Sonny? Just earlier today, I went to a Department of Corrections meeting that's held at Networks Northwest, and it's offender success. That's what they discuss. So in the Department of Corrections, through Michigan Works, that's the way I understand it, they do help people with some of the other things, like preparing them to be on parole, preparing them for some kind of housing, a job, things that we're not discussing necessarily here. But Michigan Works does have a program for that.
The peer support, if you take the certified out of it, there's peer support occurring everywhere. There are some law enforcement entities in Michigan that have peer support. Substance use have what they call recovery coaches, which is peer support. We have the VA came and spoke with us at our open forum last month. They have peer supports. It is a up and coming movement because the success rates are there. Right?
I guess my concern is what you're describing tonight is different than the thumbnail sketch we were given at the last meeting. And the reason I can't support this evening is I'd like to see something more tangible in the way of what we would be looking at in the experiential record for this individual, other than, as was said last time, and I'm being repetitive, formerly in jail, formerly mentally ill, may or may not have graduated from high school.
No, they
If
will. They
these
have to
people are going
graduate high
beyond,
school.
and they're getting a master's degree, if these are really interns or people who are actively involved in a BA program, that's quite a bit different than what was described the other night. And unlike my good friend and longtime colleague, Judge Power, I'm not ready to leap, into the void and hope there's some solid footing. I might be in a month at the next meeting, but I'm not tonight.
Well, they're not. They do have to have a high school diploma or a GED. One of those. That's a requirement of our employment. But in terms of interns, they're not interns. They're not interns. These are people who are hired into our agency. They do the work. They realize they wanted something more, and they go back to school all on their own. They do that on their own time in the evenings outside of work time, but they're doing it, and they're getting bachelor's degrees and they're getting master's degrees, and then they leave us to do other jobs. So I just want to make sure we're clear that they're not interns.
Is there any requirement on how far removed they are from incarceration? Are these people who have been sometime removed from the prison or jail system, or could they get out and start this program, a month later, or how does that work?
No. So Todd spoke a little bit about having some say into that, and we would be partners with you. We're not doing this alone. We're not saying we're going to hire somebody and tell you to take it. We would do the interviews jointly, and we would have a conversation about that. I do not believe that someone coming out of a jail in a month is going to be a person that we're expecting would give us the results that we want. So when we hire people, we look to see where they're at in their recovery. How long has it been since you graduated, is what we say, from mental health services. Has it been a year, 2 years, 5 years? How long has it been? And we have a wide array. The last peer support person that we just hired had 18 years of recovery from mental health. That was her story, and she's willing to share her story. I had a mental illness. I got services from a public system, and now I want to help other people. 19 years later, very stable.
I can tell you what changed my mindset on this was since the last meeting, I received a phone call from somebody that had seen the meeting, or heard the meeting and asked, is that position gonna be posted? Is it something I can apply for? And I said, well, no, not at this point, we'll see where it goes. But this person is college educated, professionally employed for 12, 13 years, had a bout with substance abuse, ended up getting some mental health services, spent some time in jail, got their life back in order, and now they're trying to rebuild themselves. And that's what kind of clicked for me. If that's the type of person that we're drawing, looking to apply for this type of job, and not necessarily that person, I'm saying, anyone in that boat that you know, this is a person that operated at a very high level at one point in their life. They hit a roadblock, they got what they needed to get past that roadblock, and they're looking to rebuild at that high level. And we can get the benefit of them doing that in our facility. That's what kind of changed my mindset on this after that meeting. Knowing that there are people like that in this community that are looking for a job like this. I know of at least one, and I would have to assume there are more out there.
Any other discussion? Okay, so I guess, where do we want to go next? You know, we're going to recommend to the county board the mental health first aid program, the train the trainer program. I believe there's no objection to making the recommendation for the 40 hours per week licensed mental health professional. It's 40 hours a week?
Correct.
40 hours a week, mental health professional, full-time. I think we still have some hang-up issues about the peer support specialist thing. You know, I don't know, is it,
I'd make the motion to hire the licensed mental health professional or to engage in a contract, rather to recommend to the county board that they enter into the contract to retain a licensed mental health professional as a full-time equivalent at a cost of approximately $98,000.
okay? I have a motion, do we have support?
Support.
Motion by Rogers, supported by Ritter, further discussion?
Do we need to explain how the 98,000 breaks down so that people don't think it's just the person's salary?
No,
That's gonna be an
yeah.
overall package, that's.
Nobody's gonna
some-
question that.
Some HR person's gonna break that down, it's not, that's pretty much above my pay grade. Okay, all those.
And if the question comes up that people want to apply, who hear about this through the media, they're going to apply to CMH.
They're gonna be, this will be a contract with CMH, this will not be a Grand Traverse County employee, they will be a contracted employee through CMH. You know, and there's, one of the advantages of that is there's a separation from the county. And if that person is not working the way the county feels it's working, we pick up the phone, we call CMH and say, this one's not working, we gotta do something different. You know, I think that's the nice thing, and once we have a contract in place with CMH, you know, at least in my mind, if something happens that person's not available, that person's not working, and we have to have someone else, it's CMH's responsibility to find someone to get us back in fully staffed.
Yep.
It's not our problem.
Well, I like the idea that it would be advertised and posted at least.
Yeah, we would do that. We would advertise and post.
That'll have to go through CMH, it's not a county thing.
I have a
Okay,
question about
we have a
farm.
motion made and seconded. If there's no further discussion, those in favor say aye.
I have a question about
Oh, I'm
funding.
sorry, Tom, go ahead.
And I don't know if that's our purview, is where the money's gonna come from.
Well, this is a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. They're going to have to identify the money before they can enact any of this contract. This group is just going to make a recommendation to the
All
Board
right,
of Commissioners.
thank you.
Any other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Okay. What do we want to do with the peer support specialist? Do we want to try to flesh out this more to exactly what this person's going to do, who this person is, what their qualifications are? Is that something we can review at our meeting next month when we actually see a formal proposal? At least I would hope, you know, now that we're moving forward here, which I think we're doing pretty well with. Next month, we should be able to see a firm proposal from CMH for that psychiatric component.
Correct.
And we should be able to get a fleshing out, if you will, of what exactly is a peer support specialist, what that person is qualified to do, what they're not, and move forward with that.
I'd like to see the data that CMH is referring to. I'd like to see redacted resumes. I just want to make sure we're getting a cow and not a horse, or worse, a camel.
And we're okay with that?
I can put together a
you know, I-
proposal
I
like
think-
that.
I think
Aside
that's-
from, again, I don't know about the resumes. I believe that I can, but I just need to check with our HR
At least
department on
At
that.
least a bio that is nameless bio.
Yeah, even if it's simply a
Read the
matter
names.
of, okay, this person has to have these qualifications and experiences in order to qualify to become certified.
That I can do. I can
I'd
bring you a
rather see
position
real
description.
bio of someone who actually would do this, not a
Okay.
tarted up resume.
Okay.
Yeah,
of a-
I think some nameless bios of peer support specialists you have now would be helpful.
And I'll bring their position description, and I'll bring you some data that we
Yeah,
have for pre and
prescription,
post.
Position description.
I think that would help you a lot.
Yeah.
I can bring you a position description without a person's name on it, and we can make some changes, talking with Todd before that meeting about what specifically, how we would tailor it to the jail.
Because, you know, obviously, the situation is a little different working with a person coming in and out of your office compared to someone incarcerated in a jail and then being released back to the community. There is a difference.
Fair enough.
So-
Okay.
Just stepping back a minute, can you separate on, one page, on one page, this would be separate, the mental health first aid, the training thing, just a page on that we can put in our packet for the board? And then on a
Okay.
separate page, the licensed health professional with that information that
Like
I
course
asked for.
descriptions.
Yeah, that has the different job titles, because there's 3 different types of people that could be the licensed health professional.
Yes.
Okay. Just so it's in the board packet and it's clear, and we don't have to just tell it verbally.
Okay, so I think if the consensus is that at our meeting next month, we're going to see hopefully a formal proposal from CMH to provide psychiatric services in our jail, exactly what that services is going to provide and what it's going to cost. And we're going to see a fleshed out version of exactly what is and who is a peer support specialist that we would be contracting for that service. Okay, does that make everybody happy? Sure.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so I guess the question that I would have, are we prepared at this point to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners in regard to the other 3 items? Or do we want to wait for the other piece?
We're not, I don't think even if we made the recommendation, we're gonna be ready to pull the trigger on any of this till 4th quarter. So I would recommend we wait, look at next month, and if we're gonna add 1 or 2 of those parts, add it all as a complete package to go to the
Okay.
board.
I'm okay with that. You know, I will, when the Board of Commissioners meets tomorrow night, I will give them just a brief synopsis of where we're at.
Yep.
And I think that, that we are, I believe effectively moving forward with addressing mental health concerns within our jail.
So we'll be taking that decision on the training to the board tomorrow night when we meet?
No, we'll take the whole package
That'll
at
go
one time.
like 2 weeks.
Well, probably after next month's meeting.
Okay.
Because hopefully we'll be able to be in a position next month to make a ruling about, make a recommendation as far as the CMH proposal for psychiatric services. And we'll flesh out and explain exactly what we're getting for the peer support program. And then, now, just because this group body, thinks all of these are great ideas, doesn't necessarily mean the Board of Commissioners is going to identify funding for all of them. And I think we all have to recognize that also.
So tomorrow night, we're just gonna give an update?
Tomorrow night, we're just gonna give an update of
Yeah.
where we're at right now, that we have, basically entered into pretty much explicit discussions with Northern Lakes Community Mental Health to provide psychiatric and psychological, or mental health services in the jail, and expanded mental health services within the jail.
And then maybe the packet in 2 weeks, the board will be able to vote on the training part?
No, we won't have it in 2 weeks.
Okay.
We won't,
Not even the
we won't-
training part?
We won't, no.
Okay.
There's no, even if we were to approve the training right now, the training probably won't be available until fall, I would assume.
I don't know for sure. I think it's August or September. I'm
Okay,
waiting for the
well,
report.
as soon as, if that schedule comes out and you can identify when that training is available, if you can get that to Todd,
Yeah.
because if the
We wanna
training
lock
is,
those
we
dates
wanna
as soon as
lock
we
those
can.
dates in as soon as we can. and Todd and the lieutenant will be starting to identify who will attend these, and we will lock these down, and we'll try to get as many staff as possible through the mental health first aid program, and then we'll do the trainer thing for those that we can't get through the formal program. We all know that we're going to have an ongoing staffing issue, so if we can get some of this training taken care of in-house, but in order to bring as many people up to speed as possible, as fast as possible, if we can get them in that other program.
Yep.
I'll bring you the training curriculum if you'd like to for that training.
That would be great.
Pretty intense. I can bring that so you can.
Yeah, if you could get us the packet, if you will, for the trainer and the mental health first aid program, so we can show both the Board of Commissioners and the community, this is the commitment we're making toward improving mental health services within the jail. Okay?
When is our next meeting, Mr. Chairman?
The third Tuesday of the month. We are, I have it assigned at this point, the third Tuesday of the month in this room until December is what I have currently registered, and hopefully we'll be done before that. but
July 17th.
July 17th, yeah, Todd's got it right there, so we'll be back on July 17th in this room. Okay, I think, I appreciate everyone's commitment here. Do we have any public comment at this time?
Eric Van Dusen, my public comments more in the form of questions. The first being, how is the county and the jail officials, how are they going to assess whether CMH professionals have been and are going to continue to perform adequate suicide risk assessments? Specifically, when assessing someone on whether or not they should be taken off suicide watch, who's doing the checks and balances there? Because there is a minimum standards for those type of mental health services in the jail, and everyone's trying to throw money at this by putting a full-time mental health professional in the jail, but if they're still not performing the minimum standards on when performing suicide risk assessments, and then telling jail officials to put people in isolation cells, if that's still occurring, even with a 40-hour-a-week person, there's a disconnect there. And when the jail has a different idea of what isolation means than CMH professionals do, there's kind of a disconnect. So CMH says this person needs to be isolated, the jail follows that direction, whether they should or should not. Who's following up and doing an assessment of that? I really think an independent audit needs to be performed of community mental health services up to this point, and Correct Care Solutions and Dr. Conlon. Here again, I'll say you're throwing money at the problem, but no one's really looking. You're putting the cart before the horse. You haven't even identified what's gone wrong, what caused the breakdown, which led to 2 suicides to occur in your jail. Yes, people have mental health issues, and you can't stop all suicides, but there were warning signs there and things that occurred that no one is even on this board or on the county board really looking into. Last question I have is CMH takes over the psychiatrist contract, that portion you're contemplating taking away from Correct Care Solutions, but Correct Care Solutions still has in their contract that they will pay for all psychotropic medications for jail inmates in their general contract. I think that, it could appear that Correct Care Solution is incentivized not to give people their meds by the way the contract is drafted, because that comes out of their bottom line. So the less medications they hand out, the more money they make. And that seems kind of problematic to me, and I think that should be looked into. Thank you.
Anyone else wanting to make first public comment? Seeing none, we'll stand adjourned.
See you next month.
Did you say